Ladies and gentlemen, I'm KageKaze, and I would like to welcome you to Diablo Digest, the show where I yammer on about Diablo 3 news and try to pretend it's thought-provoking. Well, just when I think that Diablo 3 news is going to be slow and that we might not hear anything really juicy until BlizzCon, it seems like the Diablo fans has found some new data mined information on a latest PTR build that Blizzard has. Hallelujah, Kalu Kale, what a wonderful day. Let me tell you about some of the changes I found to be a bit more interesting. Starting right off, one of the first things I noticed in this news post is that there's going to be a fourth passive slot. Yes, that is correct. They're going to open up the passives and allow you to have one more. I really like this change. I specifically like it because there's going to be a bunch of new passives added in Reaper of Souls. Some characters will get more than others, but it's really going to start cluttering up that passive slot, and it's going to be very difficult to just choose 3 out of what they have. So having an additional slot makes sense. I think this is really great because I can also feel it adding to types of builds you can make, because you can finally get some of these passives that you may have passed over because you needed something for survivability, or you needed something to increase your personal damage, or there was just a gameplay mechanic you wanted to have. If you wanted to pick some of these specializations, you were really missing out on some other things you might have wanted, so you really had to make a very tough decision there. Now, this can be really good for making build diversity. As a matter of fact, the whole reason why we have 6 skills is because that improves build diversity. You limit a player's choices, and you actually find there's more diversity out there, simply because they can't have everything all at once. The magic number seemed to be 6 compared to 7, and I've noticed that myself, that when I wanted to make a build, I wanted to make some kind of character, usually 7 was the point where I was like, these are the skills I'd like, and then I have to narrow it down. The reason why I don't think this is going to cause a problem is just because there's plenty of passives that are fairly unique and are still very tough to choose between, even with an additional slot. We're really looking at a very limited choice of things here, and I want to specifically take a look at a character like the Witch Doctor, because this is one I think is going to benefit quite well from this, and it goes back to my Diablo 2 days. Back when I played Diablo 2, one of the things I liked to do was, for the hell of it, I would make a summon necromancer. I just had fun commanding skeletons. I don't know why. I just ran around, let my skeletons kill things. I'd kind of like to do something like that for my Witch Doctor, since we don't have a necromancer equivalent, really. So there's going to be a new passive for the Witch Doctor that allows you to have an additional zombie dog, in addition to the one that already exists. So I can have a total of 5 zombie dogs. However, that's going to take 2 of my 3 passive slots if we assume that there wasn't going to be a new one added. So now I can do that, grab another one that buffs them, and still have room for maybe yet another one to completely specialize it, or something for myself to increase my survivability. Because there's nothing worse than having to choose between a fun gameplay mechanic and something that's really not fun that just helps you survive. I mean, if you're out there and you can't survive and you just need to be defensive, it kind of sucks some of the fun out of it. Because I remember making barbarian builds that seemed like they'd be fun, and then I couldn't play them because I just wasn't surviving out there in Inferno. And I'd have to take off something to get a skill that I didn't want that increased my armor or helped me heal, and until I found a good balance between the two, it just really wasn't as fun, because I'm constantly having to switch out something that I want for something that I felt that I needed. And I think that's the key word there, allowing players to feel like they have a choice rather than needing to pick certain skills. I mean, that's the whole balance issue that we run across with this game. Skills that feel mandatory. If a skill feels mandatory, then it's probably a bad skill and needs to be balanced with the others. Not saying that skill needs to be nerfed, but it might have to mean that the other skills are brought up to its level. But either way you go about it, if you've got a skill that seems 100% mandatory, then you've got a problem. Typically what you want to have is skills where a subset of people are going to say, no, that's mandatory, and then another skill where other people say, no, that's mandatory, because if they have different ideas of what is required, then that must mean that neither skill is actually needed. So 4 passive slots. Definitely looking forward to that. Moving on. Now, I had mentioned at some point that there's going to be caps on some of the stats that we have, right? So caps on critical hit, critical damage multipliers, things like that. It looks like the stat caps have been removed for critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and attack speed. So don't know if they're going to go through with this idea of having a cap on some of these. I'm of two minds of it. I think it's kind of nice to have this point where you really can't go too far beyond, because then you can start to work on other things. But at the same time, it does allow you to super specialize if you want to without having caps. So if I wanted to go super high end on crit, I can. If I wanted to go super high end on attack speed, I can. Now, the reason why caps seem like they might be a good idea right now, at least in the current environment, is because of that auction house, and because of how easy it is to basically get the kind of gear that you want to reach those caps. You can even reach multiple caps just because of that. With Reaper of Souls, this is obviously going to be a bit harder. As I talked about in a previous Diablo Digest episode, this is really going to help even out the loot distribution curve, and now you can specialize because you're going to have the Mystic, which is allowing you to change a stat on your item to a stat that you want, which is great. That will allow you to specialize and continue to go up and up and up, and without a cap, you can super specialize in this and really make the kind of character you want. But because you don't have the auction house and a way to easily browse through loot that fits your perfect ideal of a perfect set, basically, you will have that specialization, but you won't have everything. Like right now, it's fairly easy to get everything. You want to search for something with crit hit, crit damage, and attack speed all at the same time, you can do that. Touch of a button, click, click, click. Oh, hey, there it is. It's not very fun, in my opinion, but, you know. Now, without those caps, and with the Loot 2.0, they may have found the right place. Don't know. Again, this is all data mined information. Nothing is confirmed. But there have been some new strings that have been added to the latest patch. So it looks like, while they're removing those caps, they're going to change LifeSteal. Now, I believe I mentioned just a little bit in a previous episode about LifeSteal kind of going away from skills, not necessarily from gear, but from skills. They're changing a lot of the LifeSteal abilities to either be life on hit, to be life regained per resource spent, or some other kind of thing like that, right? So they're changing the face of healing, which goes along with the difficulty discussions that they've had with Wyatt Chain, Travis Day. They've kind of talked about this whole thing about difficulty and the health globe situation, or your health bar situation, where it's constantly going up and down, and there's really no semblance of middle ground, right? If your health bar is not full, you're in danger. If your health bar is full, you're still in danger, but typically you take so much damage so fast and you regenerate it so fast that the health bar really doesn't matter anymore. It's really just a matter of hoping that your health bar will regenerate before you die. And there is really, it's kind of hard to really care anymore. You know, things like health globes become a non-issue because you're always stealing life. And so this health globe mechanic, which was a really great idea when the game first came out, and in fact is still great when you're leveling, because when you're leveling, you don't have that situation. Typically, the difficulty curve works really well in the rest of the game. It's when you hit Inferno in the end game that a lot of this up and down stuff really hits. So what they're going to do is they're putting in this string, at least, so we'll have to see if this remains, that LifeSteal is going to be less effective as you level. So once you hit the current level cap of 60, the LifeSteal on your gear is going to go down to a 10% multiplier. So basically, all the LifeSteal of the gear that you have, you are only going to gain 10% of it. By level 70, it will no longer function at all. So what they're going to do, this is almost like what they did with Nephalem Valor, right? They introduced Nephalem Valor as a way to phase people out of gear. They didn't want you to have to worry about Magic Find and Gold Find gear. So like, okay, let's do this Nephalem Valor thing. If you got level 10... and Paragon, the Paragon level. So if you got level 100 Paragon, you have no need of Magic Find gear at all, because you're just going to always be capped. So that's kind of their way of letting you phase out gear. So it looks like with LifeSteal, they're doing the same thing. They're going to add in a mechanic that says, hey, you know, you're going to want to start getting rid of this gear. It's not going to help you anymore at the end game. So they're going to allow LifeSteal to drop on lower level items. Hopefully they remove it from high-end items, that it does not have a chance of dropping at all, because what's the point of having LifeSteal drop on a level 70 item if it's going to be useless anyway? So hopefully they do have that in place. I would imagine that they do. I just can't imagine them saying, oh, let's just still allow this useless thing to... No. Granted, it would be a free stat you could transmog, or you could change with the Mystic, but that just doesn't feel right. So, yes, LifeSteal, completely useless. So that tells me that any skills that haven't been changed from LifeSteal yet probably will be by the time Reaper Souls comes out if this change stays. So that's interesting. 2 new sets appear to be added, a Ninja set and a Thorns set. So they did talk about making Thorns more interesting. It looks like they're going to do it by making a set gear, a piece of set gear. Don't know yet what name it has, obviously, because it's all got placeholder information. I'm interested in this Ninja set. I want to know what they do there, because if they do something cool with that, at least I would hope. I really want to see some new, unique sets. I'm not entirely happy with some of the sets we have, because they're just pretty much glorified legendaries with just a bonus for having more than one, honestly. So I missed the sets of yore, the old D2 sets that had some really kind of interesting ideas on them, and I rebuilt characters just for the sake of some legendaries, or some set pieces, just because I wanted to see how it would work, how I could make it work. I remember intentionally making a Barbarian to try and fit as many sets on that character as I could. So things like Death's Hand or Death's Sash, and combining them with other sets to see how many sets I could complete at one time, to see how many bonuses I could get. That was kind of fun to me, and I like the different things they gave you. So I'm hoping to see more. So far there's only 2 that I see here. Maybe there'll be more later. Alright, so this is an interesting one in the messages. Something about Nephalem Orbs. Now, those of you who play the console version of Diablo 3 may know this. I haven't played it, so I am iffy on the subject, so anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. But Nephalem Orbs, in the console version at least, are a way to get some kind of temporary buff. So they're basically side by side with health globes. So you've got health orbs and then Nephalem Orbs, and so one's for healing, one's for buffs, and like I think maybe magic find, gold find buffs, attack power buffs, things like that, temporary buffs. And now there's some strings for collecting Nephalem Orbs. However, the string says you collected number of orbs. So this could very well just have something to do with one of the challenge modes that they're adding to the game. But because it used the name Nephalem Orb, I wanted to bring it up and kind of bring it to attention to show that that this could be anything. We don't know. So no way to tell on that one. More than likely not a addition from the console going in. Lots of legendary descriptions have been added, so there's going to be, it looks like quite a bit here, unique, whole bunch of unique items, axes, swords, daggers, but nothing too much to talk about there. Let's go up to the more recent changes. Some strings on achievements have been added, and this might not seem like much on its own. But let's take a look at one of these strings. Butcher, no hits. Alright, okay, so kill the Butcher without being burned by the floor fires or being grabbed by Ancient Spear on Torment difficulty or higher. That's right, on Torment difficulty or higher. So now we've got proof of a different difficulty mode that's possibly being discussed. Torment. So what's Torment? Well, if we look at the achievements from before, most of them required you to be in Hell difficulty. So are they just going to rename Hell? Well, there's another hint. They are removing one of the loading screen tips. This loading screen tip said defeating normal mode would unlock the next difficulty setting, Nightmare. Okay, that's a little odd. I mean, it's pretty much common knowledge for a lot of people, but it's one of those tips for people that don't know. So why would they remove that? Well, there's a bit of speculation going on this one, and I'd be interested to hear what people have to say about that. Because one of the speculations is maybe they're removing everything beyond normal. Maybe they're going to remove Nightmare and Hell and create Torment to be kind of an in-between. Possibly a scaling difficulty based on level or something like that. I'm not sure about that. I've seen that was one of the suggestions that was out there. But there has been talk about 4 difficulties in Diablo 3 just being too much. I mean, let's face it, Diablo 1 and 2 had 3 difficulties. So 1 and 2, 3 difficulties, fine progression, and then 3 comes along and we've got this 4th one because they wanted to create this one difficulty mode to rule them all, as it were. Once you hit max level, give you something to do. Honestly, it just seemed kind of weird to me because you end up hitting 60 sometime in hell difficulty anyway. So why not make the progression from normal and nightmare be 1 to 60, and then make hell be the 60 game? Because going through the game 4 different times can be a bit much. I mean, when you've gone through it 3 times, that's usually a good number there. Like, that always seemed about the just right point when I was playing Diablo 1 and 2. I mean, to go through the game that 4th time, I mean, as maximum level, it's fine. But what I usually end up finding myself doing is, once I hit the level cap, I'm just going to try and skip to the end and get that Inferno unlocked as soon as possible. So maybe they'll tighten that up. We'll have to see. But honestly, anything goes. This new Torment difficulty could absolutely be anything. And the thing about that is, we don't even know what Adventure Mode is. Adventure Mode is something that unlocks after you beat normal. So that tip could just be replaced by Adventure Mode, right? It could have absolutely nothing to do with this Torment difficulty mode. I highly doubt that Torment is going to be an additional difficulty on top of everything that we already have. That just wouldn't make sense. So we get Inferno for level 60s, Torment for level 70s? Go through the game 5 times just to get to the really good final in-game stuff? No, I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, unless they decide to rebrand Inferno as Torment. As it is, I see Inferno just bringing everything up to level 70, so you'll have level 70 mobs in Act 1 and all that. Well, assuming they keep the monster power thing, they're going to have to really consider a lot of that when it comes to the difficulty. It's going to be a completely new curve, especially with 5 acts now, right? With 5 acts, it would be very easy to hit level 60 in just 2 runs of the game, through normal and nightmare. It's hard to tell. I mean, they're not giving us enough, and I have a feeling that we're really going to get the bulk of it really soon at BlizzCon, and I can honestly hardly wait. I'm going to admit, when Reaper of Souls was first announced, I wasn't entirely impressed at first. I had been wanting something to come out for Diablo for a bit, and they've been talking about Loop 2.0, and then they didn't really give us any information, any news, and then all of a sudden Reaper Souls hits. Now, when they're doing this announcement at Gamescom, they showed some examples of some of the legendary items that they're going to call game changers, and I was not impressed. I mean, they showed the one where it gave you an additional Hydra when you kill an enemy, and then I think it was a monk weapon. I forget exactly what it was. All I know is that the ones that they picked, the only thing I could see on them were they had better stats. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, this is not what people need or want. This is not the thing people care about. They wanted the uniqueness. And then all the data mine stuff starts coming out, and we start getting a whole bunch of legendary strings. And I'm getting excited now, because I'm looking at these changes, looking at all the ideas they have, that it's going to be, it feels like it's going to be this revamp that the game really needs. I mean, almost like what they did with World of Warcraft Cataclysm, right? They completely just uprooted the world and changed it and made everything from the beginning on, just better. And it feels like it's almost too soon to just completely redo Diablo, but the truth of the matter is Diablo was in such this precarious state from the beginning that it just seems like so much has to change that they might as well do it now. And they're taking that to heart. They really are, from what I can see. There's so many changes, so many strings. I got a list of some of the passives that I was looking at for some of these possible legendary affixes. And I was going to go over these in a Reaper Souls roundup kind of thing. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to end up doing that. I've got basically a huge laundry list of what Reaper of Souls is going to add. For anyone that wants me to, I will consider doing that. Because I know not everybody is reading up on the news on Diablo fans or anything like that. If anyone would like a recap on what is going on with Reaper of Souls, by all means, please leave a comment below, and I'll go into it. But for now, let me just go ahead and talk about the legendary fixes I'm looking at and how some of these can synergize and just look really cool to me. So one of them is enemies you kill have a 100% chance to drop a health globe. Now that's obviously a placeholder number. I don't see 100% staying because we've been talking about health globes being more important now with the difficulty changes. But let's just say there's one that increases the chance for a health globe to drop. There are plenty of classes right now that have some kind of ability that relies on health globes. You can get some additional intelligence and mana for witch doctors. Barbarians, I believe, can get an additional buff. Things like that. But let's take that, right? Let's just throw that out the window. Let's look at some of the other affixes I've seen. Health globes picked up release an explosion for weapon damage to enemies within 40 yards. Picking up a health globe increases your maximum life by 5% for 15 seconds, and it stacks up to 5 times. Percentage chance for health globes to also grant some kind of power-up. So you could combine legendaries to create this unique build. So not only is your skill and your passive setup going to be part of your build, it really seems like items are going to be part of that build. Now, without the auction house, you're not ever going to get that perfect setup unless you trade, which is the important thing. You will have to trade for that to get some of these items. But in the end, too, if you manage to find them and you can create this wonky build, I think that would be just really fun to just get these items. Let's say I randomly found 2 items and they both synergize off each other like that. That would really make me want to say, you know what, let me try this. Because honestly, you never know. Like these, if someone could min-max out of all the legendaries that are out there, they might say, you know what, those are pointless. Let me go get this thing that gives me, like, invincibility for a minute. I'd rather have that to survive and just go in and wade through enemies. So with the chances of these items dropping randomly, who knows? You might be able to combine those. And I think that looks really cool. So let's look at some of the other things that were out there. Companion. Wolf Companion now summons 3 wolves. So if you could get additional pets. A Demon Hunter being a pet type class. That's really cool in my mind. On top of the fact that every single Demon Hunter pet now is going to do damage. So they're not just going to sit there and, like the bat, for instance, just gives you regeneration. The ferrets just pick up gold. They'll attack now. They'll help you. They're not just fluff. Their damage might be reduced, but there's still additional damage. So imagine this thing that buffs companions. Absorb an attribute from packs you're fighting. That could be kind of neat. Chill Effects has a 50% chance to freeze instead of slow. Well, that's kind of nice. I believe there's a passive for that, but imagine adding Chill Effects have a chance to freeze to a class that doesn't normally do that. Or maybe you're using frost damage on your weapons. They've already talked about elemental damages are going to have effects again, right? Because the weird thing about Diablo 3 is they took out all the weird elemental effects that used to happen. Poison would do damage over time, lightning could stun, fire would burn, ice would freeze. So we might go back to some of that. Here's one. Enemies you hit become marked for death. So if you're a Demon Hunter and you like marked for death, you find this item, hey, you can now switch it out for a different skill. That's a skill changer right there. This is one that I think has seen a revision lately, but when I first saw this, confused me and simultaneously intrigued me, thinking this would be absolutely amazing if they could somehow make this work. Enable all runes for a specific skill. Could you imagine finding a legendary that gives you the benefit of every single rune for one of your skills? Now, some skills that's going to be weird because they have opposing effects. But it looks like, from what I saw, a revamp of that was something like summon 1 giant zombie dog instead of the 3. Summon 1 giant one that has all the benefits of all the zombie dog runes. So you would have burning, you'd have poison damage, you'd have life leech, you'd have damage sharing. That's pretty damn cool. I would like to see how many different skills that they put that on and allow you to do this really cool just amalgamation of different skills on this ability. build-changing item here. Let's see. Emanate a slow time bubble around you. That's kind of neat. Here's one that was equip on follower. Gain access to all skills. So not only is there legendaries for you, but for your follower. I hope they continue on that mindset. If they add items that are designed for your companions. So this one, access to all skills. So instead of picking one or the other per tier, you have them all. That's kind of cool. And in a way, it can encourage you to play a little bit with your companions. And they're going to focus on companions and their stories a bit more. So maybe this would be just kind of fun to have the companion out and do that every now and then. But well, I'm excited for that. I think that's kind of cool because I like to play solo a lot. I'll just play with my companion because I like to have the conversations and all that. I just find it to be a more relaxing experience for me usually too when I'm playing by myself. But at the same time, it kind of sucks in a way because some players are never going to get that because some players only play with friends, only play with public games. But I think it's nice to have the option, so I hope they continue with that in mind. Maybe not make too many, but make one or two where that's a thought. When receiving fatal damage, you are instead restored to maximum life and resources. The item is destroyed in the process. Now, I'm not sure if that'll stay, but that's kind of a cool idea. A get-out-of-jail-free card, as it were. You lose the item, but you come back to life. Could you imagine that for hardcore? You find this item that will save you once, and you can... that's it? You'll feel like ass when you lose it, because that means you would have lost that character, but at least you lived to fight another day. That's kind of neat, but I'm not sure if they'll continue on with it. They've never really had the possibility of you losing an item before. So I'll have to see if they continue that. Talking about build changers. Elemental Arrow generates 3 hatred on one of these. So Elemental Arrow, ability that is normally a spender that does a ton of damage and it spins, you can now make it as your primary, as your resource gathering ability. Build changer, you don't need to have one of your hatred generating abilities anymore because you have it as a former spender. I can see that opening up a lot of builds. Let's see. One that prevents 100% of arcane damage and heals you instead for the amount prevented. So that's a good way to deal with those arcane beam monsters. Shrine effects last until death. I think that one was revamped in a recent patch, recent PTR build as well, which I believe it was Shrine effects lasted for just a longer duration or until death, which, you know, that's cool, getting that buffed. Pets deal 100% more damage, so they've got more pet items. Increase attack speed for your pets. Corpse spiders release web on impact that slows enemies, so a build changer if you want to try out corpse spiders. Double the range of deadly reach on a monk. That thing already hits pretty far. I don't know about that. Gain the base effects of all mantras at all times. So once again, we talked about the one with all the runes, and this one you get the base of all the mantras. That's incredible. Yeah. So you can obviously tell some of these are placeholders. They are just throwing the ideas around. It's almost like they've got this giant dartboard and they're like, hey, let's see what would be really cool. You know, just what would happen if we did this? They are intentionally, from the looks of this list, they are intentionally breaking the game. And it is theirs to break right now in the PTR. If any of us were playing any of this, I can only imagine how people would complain about just some of these things are just too good or too much or something like that. But then again, this being a co-op game by nature, you don't usually see that as much. But I've already seen a couple complaints about PvP when it comes to some of these legendary changes. So you never know. People will find something to complain about at any given time. But they're breaking it. They're breaking it intentionally. They're doing it internally without anyone else getting into it because they want to try it out. They're like, you know what? I know this is going to be broken. I know this is going to be overpowered. Let me see how it feels. And then once they're like, okay, you know, that was kind of cool. Let's make it balanced now. So they dial it back and dial it back a little bit until it's something fun and still powerful. Oh, man. there are several just build changers as well from granting access to a base rune. For example, reduce the cooldown of Fetish Army and Big Bad Voodoo by 1 second each time your fetishes deal damage, so that encourages you to use the fetishes. Here's one that teleport grants the effect of the Wormhole rune, so you'll always have the Wormhole rune while using teleport, which could free you up to use something else. Magic Missile fires 2 extra missiles, so there's already a rune for that, so why not use a different rune from now on? That's pretty cool. Here's one they talked about before, actually, as an example. Moving unhindered through enemies. So instead of being trapped by enemies, you could just move through them at will. I mean, that's kind of cool, and that's, you know, it's got potential for just being really helpful. I mean, it doesn't seem like a lot, but, you know, there are times you can get trapped, and now you can just kind of move through them and avoid things. This one I know has been changed. Call of the Ancients lasts until they die. I know that's been slightly modified, but I like that. Call of the Ancients is an ability I've really not used in my Barbarian because I find it to be absolutely underwhelming. If I could summon them full time... Seriously, these are just some of the things... I almost wish that that was a rune or something. But if that could be a legendary, awesome. Awesome. I will gladly go out and try and find that thing because I would love to have myself a Call of the Ancients build where I basically make a quote-unquote pet Barbarian build or something like that. After earning a Massacre bonus, summon forth 5 to 10 Skeletal Guardians for 45 seconds. That's kind of cool. I think that was recently changed to, instead of Guardians, that it would rain gold or something like that. See, so there's some silly ones even. And even one that chance on being hit to deal 1000% of your Thorns damage. So they are, again, looking at Thorns build because they, you know, now they can do that. Again, keep in mind that everything I've read off here is placeholder. In a beta that doesn't technically exist to us. It only exists to Blizzard. So any of this could change. But I just kind of wanted to impress the idea that they're really thinking about it. And I feel really sad that they started off with such a weak footing when it came to, like, announcing this and showing off some of these ideas. It almost feels like they're intentionally not hyping themselves up. It's almost like Blizzard doesn't want to really put all this information out just yet because maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're afraid of overpromising it. Blizzard typically will tell us the caveat of subject to change. Blizzard has always been reserved when it comes to making announcements. But this seems like they're doing it a little more so than usual. To show us some of the legendaries that were underwhelming when they had some other ones up their sleeves that they could have come up with. I'm just glad that there's some data mining going on, because quite honestly, if I would have only have had that information at Gamescom to go off of, I may not have really cared. I mean, still kind of like the game. I would have bought the expansion because it's Diablo. I'm a sucker for these action RPGs. But I wouldn't have been excited about it before I picked it up. But now I am. Now, before I go on this one, because that's pretty much all I really had to talk on this one, leave you with this last thought. And again, we don't know anything about adventure mode, right? I had mentioned that before. They've got a map for adventure mode that shows you where things will be, and it's got the waypoints on it, more like. So instead of just a list, it's going to be a map. Now, unfortunately, the map that we've gotten from the data mine information only shows Act 1. And I was kind of hoping it would show other acts. Blizzard has been asking a lot lately about what would you do if they removed the waypoint restriction from going between acts. It is very possible that adventure mode will remove that restriction. It's not confirmed. I haven't stated anything. There hasn't even been any strings to suggest that that will happen. There's really nothing in these patches that show that that will happen. But that's not something you can really pick up in data mining unless they add a UI for it, because then we can see the actual UI and see where they would put these buttons. So for now, we have no way of knowing. But they're hinting at it very strongly. If it doesn't come out in Reaper of Souls, then I can't imagine it would be much longer, because this is something that people have been asking about for a very long time. So I really hope that they do that. I mean, it would really help with just general gameplay. I mean, being able to go, like, let's say farming keys for the Infernal Machine. You could go get your stack of Nephalem Valor, go to one key warden, go to the next, and just get them all done in one shot, rather than having to stop the game, reopen the game, stop the game, reopen the game. You could formulate plans. You could farm longer. Because let's say you have a favorite farming spot in different acts. You can go to one, go to the next, and do it whatever order you want, without interruption. I understand why people want that. I'd love it. It was in Diablo 2. Why not? So let's hope that we see the return of that. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the latest news as far as data mine information. There is more out there, by the way. I've not covered everything. There are changes to character classes. Quite a bit of character class changes, actually, that I'm looking forward to. I really need to go over those at some point and just discuss those, because there looks to be like there could be some interesting builds and changes here. There are all sorts of strings and stuff. Honestly, I suggest if you're interested in the changes that are happening to Diablo 3, please visit DiabloFans.com. Good folks there. There's usually some really good discussion. I've posted previous Diablo Digest videos there and had some really great back and forth with some of the guys there on the forums. So again, I highly suggest going there. I almost always leave a description or a link to them in the video description, so you can check that out there. So thank you very much for watching, ladies and gents. Again, I am KageKaze. I'll see you in Sanctuary.